Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Today I am going to give a shot at what is, my personal favorite fantasy series of all time. That's the Chronicles of Thomas Covenant, the Unbeliever. When people call Lord of the Rings the greatest fantasy series of all time, I can't argue with it at all. I love it too. It was with me for quite a bit of my life, starting with the animated features, which I didn't know came from books as a young kid. Of course, I saw the Pete Jackson films and all that. But along the way, when I got into my 30s, I actually started reading the Thomas Covenant books, and it was like a big grown-up stage for me. There's like a level up in reading for it. I was at work doing my business, and lo and behold, I caught myself, I've been thinking of the Thomas Covenant books for about the past 20 minutes. So they'll infect you a bit. They're not light reading. These are not casual reads. You have to pay attention and focus on them. So the thing is, just to get started, so here we have Lord Foulsbane. This started out in the 70s, I think it was. And so Thomas Covenant, it starts in the real world. He's an author. He lives on a farm, but he contracted leprosy as a child, and it manifested when he was an adult. And he had a wife named Joan and a son named Roger, and she grabbed him and ran off with him because she just didn't want to have to deal with a leper. And so he's not a very happy individual. And you're going to get a lesson in leprosy about what it can do to you, doing a self-search called BSE, because even a cut that can get easily infected can lead you to a demise that you just do not want to have to go through. And even if you don't quite die, the deformities you can suffer, it just scared the living hell out of Thomas Covenant, and he is informed that basically you have to live the life of a coward, because even a sharp corner on a table, you can't have that. You have to have rounded corners, that kind of thing. But despite that, he goes in town. He wants to, I believe he's paying the bill, and he has an accident. And when he wakes up, he's on top of this keep in a fantasy land. And this young girl named Nina finds him and befriends him and takes her to her village. And they quickly inform him that he is some kind of messiah to them. He's got a white gold wedding ring on, which does not exist in their land, and it is a talisman of extreme power. And because of his leprosy, he lost a couple fingers, and that happens to coincide with an old hero called Beric Halfhand, who was a savior of the land. And so they deify Thomas Covenant this way, and you're going to be our hero. And he thinks he's in a coma dream. He refuses to believe this, and not just because of the unreality of it. What am I doing in a fantasy land? But because as a leper, he can't afford to just buy into this. And like he thinks somewhere in his subconscious something's trying to give up and just get a little too lackadaisical about it, and he's going to wind up killing himself over this. So he can't handle this. He can't handle the pressure. And even at one point, the young girl, she takes him, and there's this healing stuff by rivers you can find called Hurtloam, and she makes his leprosy go away, or at least represses it. And all this he can't handle, and he sexually assaults her. And it's right here that a lot of people will stop reading, because they're like, well, I'm not reading a rapist protagonist. So in a way, I can't blame you, but we're going into a problem in fiction where the use of assault can be just gratuitous. You have things like there was a comic series which later spawned a couple movies called Kick-Ass, and they didn't really they kind of vaguely hinted at it in the second movie that there was this female character, one of the heroes, that she gets assaulted, but in the comics it's pretty blatant. And when asked about this, he was like, well, It's no more, we gotta, the bad guy's got to do something. And it's no more different than say, decapitation, um, uh, which is not even vaguely true. It's not accurate at all. And the problem is, I don't know if it was Millar himself who said this, but at the time of this, someone said that, you have to hate the bad guys, and here's a way to make you hate the bad guys. And this doesn't work at all. We don't have to hate the villains. We love Darth Vader, but he killed children. We love Hannibal Lecter. Well, he ate people. And we love Pinhead from Hellraiser, but he will literally take you to hell and rip you to pieces and be charming about it the whole time. So you don't try to make us hate the characters. Just write your characters, and it's up to us, the reader, to determine whether or not we're going to hate them. And so if you're using this as some kind of tool, well, I got to get this female character raped in order for you to hate the villains. It's terribly gratuitous. And there was I believe her name was Gail Simone. She came up in 1999 with a phrase called "women in refrigerators." Because what happened was that a character in DC Comics, a Green Lantern, had a villain find his girlfriend and kill her and stuff her in a refrigerator. And of course, this is to piss off the hero, so he goes and gets badass revenge. An example of this would be a movie like Mad Max, where his wife and child get run over by a biker gang, and he's just horrified by this, and he frets over it for maybe a day or so. But he goes off and he opens up this case, and it's got this badass black leather outfit on. He's got this badass double-barreled gun. He gets in his badass black car with a blower on it, and goes off and gets badass revenge. And unfortunately, the wife and kid just don't get to see that revenge. But I don't know that the bad guys do have to do something. And this appears to be a tool that they want to use. I watched the first season of True Detective, and it's a great show. But the core of it is that a generational cult, has this long history of sexual assaults on children, and they film it. You don't see it on the TV. I mean, in the show, they film their shenanigans, and it just, I guess it works. It sets you off, and the bad guys get their comeuppance. But there was a book I read called The Warded Man, and in the beginning you meet this woman. She's the healer of the village. Everybody loves her. She's a very likable character. She gets out into the wilderness, meets a couple dudes. Turns out they're bandits, and they assault her. And when I read this, I just was like, it wasn't like, oh good, now I hate the villains. They're gonna get what's coming to them. I was like, I'm just disappointed. Why did this have to happen to her? I suppose that, I wouldn't go so far as to. It's a hard subject to kind of display here, because I had a note here. Where did it go? Like, there was another book where there's this poacher against a sniper, and there's a woman involved, and he was going to assault her, but he doesn't. He's going to use her for a prize. And so I thought, well, okay, so you stepped it back. He's still the villain that you need, but he stepped it back a little bit, so it didn't happen. And so I guess my sort of request almost to authors would be, if you're going to write this in, you sit back and ask, just for a minute, do I really need to do this? Because the violence against women in entertainment is a greater proportion than it happens to men. And so ask yourself, is this women in refrigerators, or is this actually going to serve this in some way? Occasionally the coin is flipped, and sure enough, you get the movie Alien. Ridley Scott, who is a devout feminist, said he made Alien the way he did because instead of going after the women, we go after the men, and all the men get torn to pieces. There's another woman that gets killed, but Ripley's the one who saves the day, or at least saves the day for herself anyway. Everybody else gets destroyed. It's her and the cat. So what's Donaldson doing here? Well, he's doing this a little different. So in, like, for example, the Marvel movies, the MCU, we have Loki. And in mythology, Loki is a bestiality rapist. But in the films, we just love the guy. Tom Hiddleston does a great job. We just love the character. And how far can we talk about Zeus, that horn dog? He just comes down from the heavens, does whatever he wants to do, and we just have to put up with it, and there's no repercussions for them. So here is this deified Thomas Covenant, and it's ugly. It happens on the page, and it's not okay. It's not okay when it happens. It's not okay for the repercussions that do have to be dealt with the parents of this child and the one who is going to marry her. But they have this vow of nonviolence, for one, because there are these spirits who are the servants of Lord Fowl, and they don't really have bodies themselves. They're just spirits, and they're called ravers. And when somebody starts to get particularly angry, they start to ask, are you raving? Are you possessed? And so they have a non-violence vow anyway, but also, well, he's deified. We got to take him to the wizards so somebody knows what to do with him. But they are in just complete horror about the situation. But they do it anyway. They take him off to see the wizards. The other thing that goes with this is that he thinks he's in a coma dream. He got in an accident, and he's just having this vivid dream. And so he disbelieves, again, because it could cost him his life. He has to defend himself. And so in the dream, you fill the roles of the characters that you meet. And so in this case, rape being a crime of power, he's trying to get power over himself so he doesn't get lazy and commit some kind of subconscious suicide over the matter. It's very complex in thought. Is one of the most complex characters in fiction, if not the most complex character on Thomas Covenant. To go along with that, it feeds right into the theme that what responsibilities should you have for the actions and things that you do inside your dreams. So at this point, I guess I will start going into some spoilers. I will say that these aren't, I wouldn't call them grim dark per se. This is high-end fantasy, high fantasy. It's like an opera in written form, and that's a good way to think about it. So I guess I'm going to go more spoiler at this point. I'll probably try to put a timestamp in over the matter. So from this point forward, I'm going to talk about what happens in these books a bit. I'm not going to do a fully detailed analysis because there's 10 books. I have to work a full-time job. I thought about doing a book a day, but that would just take a very long time. There's other videos I'd like to do, so I'll do as much as I feel like I can right now. So spoilers from here on out. So he does go meet the wizards, and he is taken on an adventure because they think they need to go get this guy Jewel Rockworm because he has this long lost artifact called the Staff of Law, and he was the one who summoned Covenant to the land in order to get the white gold. So Lord Fowl, who is trapped in this world, can destroy what's called the Arch of Time, which is literally a barrier that he can't get out of. and so he helps Drool learn how to use it, although Drool thinks he's kind of gonna rebel against the master because he's got the power now. He's a very Gollum-like person. So they wind up defeating him and his armies. The way Covenant does it is he doesn't know that he really did it, but it happens in an emotional moment where he lights off a volcano, and these magical beasts called the fire lions come out of the lava and just wipe out the army. And with that, Covenant is sent back to the real world. So we have the Illerth War. Since this, I guess, is my favorite series, this might by default be my favorite fantasy book. He is summoned back to the land, right to the wizards themselves. The head of the order is called Lena, and she has the Staff of Law. And she meets with them, and like I said, big spoilers here. Turns out she is the daughter of Alina, the young girl that he assaulted in the first book, and she's running the show. He still refuses to believe in the reality of the land, but he can't really resist her as a person. She's just too charismatic, and everybody just it's one of those characters you just love. And along the way in this book, there is a forced march. They have to go fight Lord Foul's army. They're trying to get to a keep, but they get headed off. This fellow by the name of Hyle Troy, who claims to be from the real world, winds up being their general that leads this march. And what happens is when they get headed off, they're about to be slaughtered. So this fellow right here, Lord Morham, one of the wizards, he thinks there's a way to get out of this, because the forest here, called Garroting Deep, these are dangerous places. You don't go in the woods. It is tended by this fellow here, called Forestall. He is referred to as a butcher. They are not happy about what's happened to the land and how the trees and everything have been diminished. So he tries to summon this guy, and he does it by singing a song, and he profanes it, which gets the Forestall to come out. And at first he's like, I don't have anything to do with this. I'm not going to help you. But the leader of Foul's army is someone possessed by a raver, and when they mention this, he changes his mind. He says, oh, okay, you can come in. And so the friendly army is allowed to pass through. The evil guys, they see this, they go into the woods, and they are ripped to shreds and are destroyed to the point as if they were never there. And then they take the primary band of people up to this hill where he goes off and he starts torturing this raver. Now, in the meantime, Covenant and Alina run off to their goal. But by the time these guys get to this hill where they're torturing this raver, all of a sudden Thomas Covenant shows up, and there are this group of bodyguards are called the Huruchai. I can't ever pronounce the name right. They're like these Captain America level monks. They're very long-lived. They're just unarmed fighting combatants of the highest order, and they are the bodyguards of all the wizards. And a couple of them went with Covenant and Alina to this other goal. This character shows up called Amok. And Amok is this puzzlement. They don't know what he is. He might be something that can lead them to one of the wards that are set by this fellow Kevin Landwaster, and he's called that because Lord Foul tricked him into destroying the land when he was trying to destroy Foul. He's got these 7 wards, and so he might be the key to the 7th. And it turns out that's what he is. But they have to ask the right questions, and eventually they figure out from one of the Huruchai who are ancient people, because they were there, that this final ward might be what's called the power of command. It's a wish. And Alina is all over this. Covenant starts getting very manipulative, and he starts getting other people to try to take responsibility for what he should be doing, because he doesn't want to be the hero. He doesn't want anything to do with it, and he thinks everything's just leading into this Lord Fowl's plans anyway. And so he pushes her to sort of take it over. And she becomes a symbol for why Covenant was chosen. I mean, he was summoned by Rockworm, but he was picked. There was a creator who said, okay, so you're going to be the one when they summon you, try to summon you into the land. And so you've never been where the last piece of this book goes. The suspense is terrible, because you've never been there. You don't know what Alina's going to do. You don't know what Covenant's going to do, because he's just pushing everybody away, and he's trying not to be the hero. But when they get there, you find out, it goes down deep into a mountain, and you find out that it's basically, this mountain has such weight to it that it's crushing the magic right out of the land into this pool. And she takes a sip, and she summons this specter of Kevin Landwaster and says, go kill Lord Fowl, go defeat him. And he's like, oh, I'll give it my best shot, but this is a mistake. And even Covenant tried to warn her beforehand, do not do this, because this is what he wants. And it was what he wanted, because he masters Kevin Landwaster. He comes back. Kevin and Alina start to do battle. He attacks her. The Hirachi grab Covenant and get him out of there, and that's why they wind up on the hill without her. And there at the end, they point out that Covenant is starting to fade away, because Alina was the one who summoned him, and she lost her life. And that's where this ends, when he gets back into the world. I'm not going to take too much longer here. It's almost half an hour. So probably the end to this comes to Covenant. I'll say quickly, when he comes back to the land, he actually has he meets Lena again, who's lost her mind, and she tragically loses her life. This portion here on the cover is a moment where the specter of Alina is now in control by Lord Fowl, and she's going to eventually kill him. But the fellow who is going to marry her is there too, and he sees that this is just not the way he wants Covenant dead, but he says this is not the way that this can be done, and he's actually able to put a stop to this, and his ring meets her staff and blows it to bits, and she gives him an encouragement before she vanishes away. And Covenant goes directly after Fowl, and he's taken in, and they have their showdown. And basically what Covenant figures out is that even though he doesn't believe the land exists, he has to take some kind of responsibility and just deal with the situation anyway. And it's in this little window that he gets the ring to operate properly, and he completely overpowers Fowl. And he's got him captured. He's really in a bunch of the specters. All these dead people show up and said, kill him, get rid of him. And he explains you can't. It basically feels like an abstract being of hatred, though he can take a human form. But he can't be killed. He'll always come back. And so he basically diminishes him down to a childlike state, and he vanishes. That was going to be the end, but I guess an editor or an agent he kept telling Donaldson, look, let's why don't you try this, why don't you try that and make more, and he kept like, no, I wouldn't do that, I would do this. And after a while of that, he had enough material to continue on, and so he returned to all this, another 3-book series, The Wind of Land, The One Tree, White Gold Wielder. So as far as favorite bits of this go, what you get out of these books is a sense that things don't have to go the way that they go. There can be other decisions you can make. They have options, and occasionally they just make the wrong one. And so, for example, they go off to the One Tree, where they're trying to remake the Staff of Law, and it winds up being a mistake. The island is lost. It rouses what's called the the worm at the end of the world that's going to destroy the world. And they set that off in this book. Eventually, again, Covenant and Foul are going to come to blows. But it's there's not an actual fight, I should say. Foul has him basically where he wants him, except that Covenant knows a little bit better, and what he winds up doing is giving him the ring. And it has to be given up freely. You just can't take it. And what's described here, he kills Covenant right away, kills him right there. And what happens here is Foul puts this ring on, and his every word he speaks drips with this overpowered arrogance. And so he is going to bust out of this world and take over the cosmos. And so he unleashes this blast of magical power, and it hits the Arch of Time, and the specter of Covenant is there. He's become the Arch of Time. When it says white gold wielder, they're actually not talking about the ring, they're talking about Thomas Covenant himself. And so he becomes one with the world, really. And Foul starts blasting away at him. And every one of these blasts is described as something that can just destroy a mountain. So it's like a nuclear weapon going off every time he fires away. And he can't stop. And he uses up all his power, and once again he diminishes. And because of the harm that he set up to the land, there's a whole other character mentioned here. Her name's Lyndon Avery. And she has her own trauma from the real world. And it had to do with the death of one of her relatives, which she had a kind of a hand in, and as a result, she thinks that even though she's a decent person, deep in her soul, she's actually evil. And when this is over, and they have the newly formed staff of law, the specter of Covenant says, you got to take hold of this and use your ability and heal the land, which she does. And after that, she becomes the lead character of a whole new series of Thomas Covenant books. So what I would try to describe her, this is literally the adventures of Lyndon Avery. Probably one of the greatest scenes in these books happens where someone who looks like Covenant is following her, and she has an adopted son of her own who is there also. And so they take her off on an adventure, but they says, look, we're having a hard time keeping these formed because, I was dead, so don't touch us. And this kind of coincides with something that a lot of times Thomas Covenant himself said, because he was a leper, don't touch me. You don't want people touching me. Part of it's because he's a leper, and part of it's because, look, just don't touch me. And so you get the sense that they are not who they say, and they take her to the same place as what was in the Ill Earth War, because they take her back in time to get there. And they are trying to trick her into triggering off the end of the world and get more power, and she instead uses it to reveal what's going on. And sure enough, the one who looks like Thomas Covenant is actually Roger, his son, who was taken from him when they found out he was a leper, and he has joined the forces of evil. The other is her adopted son, who has this creature on his neck called a croil, and it's got his fangs suck into him, and it's controlling him that way. And they leave her there. They escape from her. And she winds up wandering down, getting washed out of there, and she winds up in the forest, which is where the butcher, the forest all exists. And she had previously met this wonderful little lady called the Madao, and she has a scene with her deep in these woods. It's a very calming one, a little dangerous because the forest all shows up. But Madao and the forest all kind of know each other. It's kind of a peaceful moment. He helps her with the staff of law that she's wielding, and says it's not quite finished, and helps her out. And then After all this loss, the dog takes her and places her back where she belongs in the proper time so she can go be the hero again. The greatest, it's one of my favorite scenes in the book, and one of those, it's one among many scenes in these books that you're just going to remember forever once you're done reading it. You're not going to forget these things. Sometimes you go across your bookshelves and it's like, I don't remember how that ended. I don't remember this little scene here and there. No, there's a lot you're going to remember just reading through these one time. There's one in here. Remember, Thomas Covenant had a wife named Joan. Well, they get her into the land, and guess what? She's, of course, got a ring too. And so they use her instead of Covenant. And in this scene with her, he has to deal with her, and he has to kill his own wife, and she's resisting it. She's under control from a raver, but she at least resists enough so Thomas can do something about it. He has to take her life, and then soon after that they look up into the sky and they see all the stars are starting to wink out, and that leads to this race. I shouldn't say race, because one thing you'll notice is that sometimes Donaldson can take his time a little bit. There are some tedious scenes in here where he just takes a while to word it out, but otherwise this is a race to the end. There is I don't want to call it a fan service moment, but it feels like a little bit when there is this battle near the volcano, and there's these creatures that are just unstoppable. There's not a huge bestiary in these books, not a lot of monsters, but there are these creatures called sand gorgons, which Covenant makes use of in these to get to Fowl, to bust into these unbreakable doors, to deal with one of the ravers who, as Thomas put it, was more powerful than he wanted to become to defeat him, because he might break the world. And so he summons a sand gorgon and devours the guy. Unfortunately, when he devours his raver, the sand gorgons turn up in here infected, and they're the bad guys now. So Covenant, by the volcano, summons down the fire lions and just washes them away so they can further get through. In the end, of course, once again, Fowl shows up. Roger, his son, shows up. His son loses his life, but here comes Fowl, and he says to him, look, the world's going to end, and you can't get out of here. And so Covenant winds up subsuming Fowl and taking him into his body. And then the entire adventuring group, who you're going to come to know very well in these books, get together, and the world ends. But it doesn't end there, of course. It is literally a remaking, and it's not a question of the evil being washed out of the world or anything. It's just the world is reset, and they're walking around in a paradise. Covenant with it sort of reminds me of a little bit like the movies Kill Bill, which are about in Buddhism, you have these 5 poisons to your soul, and each one of the characters that is overcome represents one of these poisons. Now, I don't know that Joan, his wife, and his son were considered poisons, but he loses them, and instead he gets Lyndon and her adopted child to be with him as they go through the world and search it over and remake it and tend to the world now in this, which is basically a paradise of a place to be. And that's where it ends. He sticks the landing right here. It's outstanding. There's no, the only flaw, like I said, is maybe sometimes, I don't want to say slug, but it's a little tedious in places, but otherwise, start to finish, it's just a great series of books. And I got to read this during a birthday week, so I was very, very happy with that ending. So that is it right there. That's what I wanted to go over. Donaldson does have other work, the Gap series, which is science fiction. Recently he did what's called the God Wars, a trilogy of books. Morden's Needs, which was a duology, which there's some people that like those better than they liked these, but not for me. I like these better. And he had a really good short story collection called Reeve the Just and Other Tales, which is outstanding series. So that's about it. I hope this wasn't too difficult a topic to tackle for people, especially at the beginning. And that's all I wanted to talk about today. I hope you got something out of this and have some reply about my views on the use of sexual assault. I'll be more than happy to read them. Thank you very much. Oh, the sun's coming out. I started, it was all gray out, and the sun's coming out now. These start out gray and dark and end up in the beautiful sunshine. What a nice bit of timing. Thank you so much. Hope you have a lovely day. Thank you.